Great. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity, Ira. So I think I've known you, I've followed your work, and you've spoken at all the major conferences. You've seen a variety of these events, what works, what doesn't work. On my end as well, I've been to some interesting retreats and the regular usual conferences. And I somehow, like when I stumbled upon your idea of CruiseCon, I was wondering, why didn't anybody else do this? Of course, there are conferences like that
Mhm.
happens through like a cruise format, but nothing that I've come across in the tech circles. Like maybe even the OEM vendors, I would have assumed they would have taken over a fancy cruise ship and did their annual
Mhm.
SKO or whatever. But it still seemed very fresh, and there has to be a reason. So there has to be logistical things that we need to solve. So want to
Mhm.
learn from your experience how you went about launching this, and yeah, and best wishes for your
Oh,
second
yeah.
installment coming down.
Yeah, well, thank you. So the way I came up with the idea is obviously I like cruising. I go to cybersecurity conferences a lot. And when I was on the ship once, I know that there was a conference center there. And I'm like, let's put a cybersecurity conference here. And the thing was, that was like an idea. And then for a few years, I kept marinating on it. And then finally, I just decided I'm going to do it. But when I decided I'm going to do it, it had to have certain criteria for it. Because, like, I've been to so many events. I know what I like, I know what I don't like. So I knew I had to put together, like, because the one events that were special that most people don't even know exist are the VC events, like the events held by Team Aid, events held by Wing
Okay.
Capital. You go to RSA, for example. I love RSA, don't get me wrong, but it's become a caste system at RSA, where if you are one of the elite, you get invited to Evolution Equity's president's dinner, where it's not the
Hmm.
president of Evolution Equity, it's a president like Bill Clinton or
Yeah.
George Bush. And then you have other ones, and most people don't even know these things exist. And it's frustrating. I go to them, I love them, and I'm sitting around, for example, in the desert with Teammate Retreat with Fortune 100 CISOs when I was chief security architect at Walmart. I'm like, this is awesome. But I don't need this as much as like the
Mm.
average person getting started. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to bring together people in a way that facilitated the networking, because these retreat events have A-list content and they have, more important, the networking ability. And when I started thinking about how I could do this on a cruise ship, I started reaching out to my friends. Like our initial event, we had Michael Rogers, Admiral Rogers, former director of NSA, who I know.
Hmm.
I started reaching out to Fortune 100 CISOs and got them on board to be speakers. And these are the people who I meet at the elite events, who the average population never meets. And
Yeah.
so that I wanted to bring together and put in an environment where everybody interacts the way it used to be. Like, for example, RSA, like, true story, I was in like one of these, this was decades ago, unfortunately. And I was in one of these, like, I forgot the name of the music venue on in Mason Street, but I was like walking around, and all of a sudden there's this guy is like, Ira. And I'm like, and it was Jairo Orea, who at the time was CISO of some organization. And this
Yeah.
was like, and he was just hanging out in this place with the people on his team. There wasn't all these elite events at the time to do this, and we were laughing because it's a long story. But i I basically, one of a person who worked for him wrote a review of the book, of one of my books, and he didn't like the book. Well, it was like an okay review, and
Mhm.
I contacted the guy. Actually, I called him up at his home. That is kind of creepy. But what happened was, Iro said, "You freaked out one of my guys." And we were laughing over this, and this is how you get lifelong friendships.
Yeah.
And you don't have the ability at RSA to do this anymore, because people like Hyro are like all in these events for good reason. They're not elitist. But
Hmm.
then, like at CruiseCon, to know I satisfied this, there was a SOC analyst who was attending, and he came over to me during the opening reception, and he was like, I was talking to this guy at the bar who was a really cool, nice guy. And then when you started, you introduced him as the CISO for Royal Caribbean. And I
Oh,
never knew somebody like that could be a real guy, a good, nice. I go, yeah, Hiro's a good guy.
that a fun
And
job? Yeah.
this is the type of environment that I wanted at CruiseCon. The content, again, A-list content. You could look at the agenda online. You're not going to, you'll, I mean, maybe somewhere there'll be a good event like that, but it's going to be hard to compare. But then I wanted to keep it at a price point that's accessible. I mean, frankly, our price point is less than just the entry fee for most of the large events these days. On top of that, we include the hotel and the meals. Yeah, this doesn't include alcoholic drinks and stuff, but still, we're cheaper and we're over a weekend. So anyway, sorry, I'm
No,
babbling,
I mean,
but
yeah,
that.
I mean, you're so passionate, so I didn't want to interject you, but I do want to play the devil's advocate, because when I came across this concept, of course, I immediately said, okay, I want to come on board. This is fun. But for many, there's a lot of inhibitions. Like, how do I even go and talk about this to my boss to convince them? Or when I say boss, obviously the boss at home as well as at work. So
Uh-huh.
tell me more, like, how do you like, how does
Well,
this like fit into, okay, this is what
yeah,
I'm doing, and it's not just all fun.
yeah.
And
So,
how do you
well,
justify?
So the boss at home, I think, is the easier one. Frankly, our price includes a plus one. If you
Perfect.
want to bring your family, we encourage it. We specifically, chose a ship that facilitates families, that has entertainment. We want people to enjoy the event and enjoy people during the day, and then include their plus ones family as they choose fit in the evenings on the shore excursions and everything like that, where we do become one big family. And so that's number one. I know my wife would literally, well, I don't know if she divorced me, but she would pick a trip more extravagant than
Yes.
whatever I was going on and get on a plane and say, screw you and leave. But, that's it. This is in design because I travel a lot and I never feel lonelier than when I'm at some place where I wish there was somebody I was with. And that's something that was critical for this event. That's number one.
Mhm, mhm.
Number two, and no extra cost. Number two, with regard to your, work boss, the fact of the matter is, again, this event is cheaper than the other competitive events. It's higher quality than the other competitive events. Yes, it seems like this, but we do intentionally pick a weekend cruise so that, these are 5-day cruises intentionally, 1 day for travel, 1 day back, theoretically. 2 days are over a weekend, and we have well, actually, CruiseCon West, we only have one shore day.
Mhm.
So most of the trip is a Thursday and Friday, and we get back to land 6 a.m. on Monday. So you could be back at work or at least virtual easily Monday. So technically, you're only a day and a half away from work. And the
Yeah.
cost, if they want to compare this event to any of the other major events that are going on in October, September, there's a lot of them. I challenge them to find an event where they're going to have higher quality content with the ability to network with people of the caliber that there is in an environment that really fosters the growth, the networking, the ability to really connect with somebody, pick up the phone if they have problems. So I really do think, much like the CISOs have no problem going out in the desert, or most recently going out to Miami and Key West,
Okay. Yeah.
for an entire week to take a day and a half of work, I think is a no-brainer for the employees to get this quality of attention.
I truly believe that. I did see the roster of people you've been able to bring on for your first CruiseCon, and I've seen conferences where you go through vendor. I mean, obviously the vendors keep it neutral, but it's basically one vendor after other coming in talking the story from their lens. So what stood out for me is, of course, like the quality of people who have like no affiliations with any of the vendors, people are true practitioners, and the minimal like sponsorships that you took even for the last one, right? So I know that for one, like, I get lost in the RSA floor and nothing really sticks with me. The few
Mhm.
brands that really resonated with me is usually the ones that I met at a completely random event, right? So
Hmm.
I think that the size also matters. Like if this was like having a booth floor with 20 or 30 different vendors, I don't think people would really connect with any of the vendors personally, but you intentionally keep it to a very minimal set of sponsors. So,
Hmm.
well, how did you
Yeah.
come about doing that?
Well, so there are I've actually obviously analyzed now doing something like this, these event marketplace. And there are these CISO events, which are 1 day short events where people come in, vendors are part of the speaker slots and things like that. And I don't want that. I need to have top level quality. And the vendors, don't get me wrong, vendors are important to enable an event like this or any event. That we wouldn't have events if it wasn't for the vendors for the most part. And so the vendors are critical, and I appreciate them immensely. They are in the room, they have their table in the room, but
Mhm.
we limit the number of vendors, maximum one vendor for every 20 people. So, it's not there. And the vendors are instructed to not harass people. Because I tell vendors, I go, look, you are essentially going to be it sounds bad when it comes out of my mouth, but you know what I mean. You're essentially going to be trapped on a ship with,
That's what.
you know, yeah,
Yep.
with the audience, and if you can't make a sincere connection with the person you want to connect with, you do not belong in this industry. You should go, and I tell vendors, look, you are, just say, look, you get to know them as a person. You say, look, I know we're here in this event. I don't intend to bother you, but if you could, I would appreciate 45 minutes of your time when we get back to land sometime. And if you are a true good person, I do not know any CISO at any level who would say no to you if you made a sincere connection with them. If you're there just to harass
Yep.
people, I don't want you on the event. I don't even want some CISOs on the event. That would be great to have because I know them personally, and some of them are really just there to get the top level dinners, to have their ego stroked. The people I
Mhm.
have, again, I use Hyro for, because Hyro's a good, Hyro's my bro. And Tyro is just like a good person you would meet at a bar and not know the difference that he was an executive of one of the top companies in the world. And this is the type of people. And I want those type of people. I want those type of vendors. And I will say we are not necessarily excluding vendors from speaking slots. For example, we are going to have another event and we're having an entrepreneurs panel and we're going to have
Oh,
HD Moore, whose company is Run Zero. But most of you know HD Moore
yeah.
is one of the leaders in the field for an extended period of time. And also, Chris Wysopal is going to be on that same panel. Chris
Mhm.
Wysopal, I think he's wrapped at 7. I'm not sure. I apologize to Chris, but they're going to be there. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
sponsoring that event in the future. I don't
Yeah.
care. I want those quality of people to present, sponsor or not. But I'm not going to have a default vendor presentation
Yeah. You
just
brought up
because they
very
came
important.
on.
That's a very important distinction. I'm glad you drew that. People have this idea of buyers versus sellers. It's a spectrum, right? You have people cross pollinating this entire spectrum who've been in the other side. So I don't subscribe to the concept of, okay, are you a buyer or a seller?
Yeah.
To put it
I,
out there.
Well, some sponsors will have an attitude like, why is HD Moore and Chris Wysopal on the panel while my executive isn't? I'm like, you put you put a few decades into contributing proactively to the industry. I'll give your CEO a spot too. Until then, I don't want somebody who says so and so his expertise is in growing and enhancing companies throughout the IT spectrum for the last 2 decades. HD Moore created freeware that became the default standard for the industry, as an example.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'm passionate about, not having sponsors as, as a conference speaker.
No, yeah. Glad that you clarified. Tell me about, again, it's going to be a 5-day cruise, and you did say there's a few. I mean, you've chosen the cruises. I've been on this exact same cruise. I know people who are on that cruise are there for the sake of cruising, right? There's really nothing much to
Yeah.
go and explore. It's just the
Well,
fun of being on the cruise, right?
well,
So
yeah. So this cruise is it's technically a 4-day cruise to Ensenada. We leave Thursday afternoon. We have the welcome reception there, and then we're going to have the the deputy CISO Ask Me Anything panel, the most popular session we had at the last event, despite having Admiral Rogers and even me as a speaker. The CISO panel was the favorite, hands down. So we're going to have a deputy CISO panel this time because people said they want kind of some more relatable people. We're still going to go back to a CISO panel, but people at a lower level with similar insight. Um, the second day is a C day, and we're going to have our event roughly from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., with lunch break and networking breaks and things like that. In the evening, free time for everybody. Third day is Ensenada, and we're going to have group excursions we're putting together, because just to go around as a group. So anyway, we have that. The fourth day is sailing back, which is another C day, and we're going to have another, the event roughly from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. that day, with content. People can get together, lunch to network and everything. And then also the closing reception that evening. And then day 5, we unfortunately arrive back at the port of LA, or I guess it's the port of San Pedro now. I don't track these
yeah,
things, but it's so we have that, but also as important, we are on Quantum of the Seas, which is a quantum class vessel, which is one of the most modern equipped ships at sea. Even though it's like one generation back on Royal Caribbean, they still put some of the most advanced features in there. There's Broadway shows on the ship. There's ice skating rinks. There's ice skating shows. There's go-karts on the
yeah,
ship. There's climbing walls. There's what do you call that? I
rock
fly.
climbing. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
rock
yeah,
climbing. Well, no, rock climbing and I fly on the ship, and so there's an incredible amount to do. Both, you're +1 while you're not there
yes.
with them, as well as with the +1 in the evening free time. Also on the shore day if you don't go on the group excursion or when you get back.
Plenty, yeah, plenty to keep yourself busy. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
I,
Is the format also going to be more exclusive Chatham House rules, or do you have like an opportunity for people who couldn't make it to the trip? Can they access the content virtually?
So right now we do have CruiseCon virtual that we did from the first one. We recorded the sessions, and we worked with TechStrong, DevOps Institute, whatever they call themselves today. And TechStrong put that up live. We had CruiseCon virtual. We are intending to record these sessions, but don't know when that's going to go live. I'm going to say to a certain extent, we do provide the speakers the ability to edit out content. And frankly, the first CISO we had on the original event, we had actually 2 sessions of the CISO Ask Me Anything. The first session was not recorded by request of the CISOs.
Okay.
And because they wanted to discuss freely, things were said, that frankly they might not have said if they knew it was going to go out to the rest of the world. Then we have then we had the second one because we did say, hey, we got some really great content. People loved it. Can we record you again? Ira could not because of, he didn't have the chance to get it cleared for company restrictions. Everybody else said, okay,
Mm,
we will keep it to a minimum. And that's the session that was recorded. So you do get more candid conversations if you attend. You do get more opportunity. The networking opportunity is only there if you attend. And then also some of the sessions were edited before we did put virtual because the speakers were comfortable in a
yeah.
smaller room. And we did take out a few of the comments, some of that got, you know, I'll just leave it at that. I won't say what we
Yeah.
took out.
No, this is, yeah, of course. I'm glad you're able to make it as accessible as possible, right? Because of course, like these are great speakers, great content. It'd be a waste if we couldn't access it
Yeah.
at a later time. I think that those are most of my questions I had to play the devil's advocate. I'll have one other question to wrap up, and you let me know if you have any questions for me. This is about the ideal audience, right? So when people look at this concept, they immediately gravitate towards, oh, maybe this is a retreat. It's for the CISOs. It's not. So, like, what? Tell me from your own perspective. Like, who do you think this is most valuable? Who should really make time for this?
Frankly, if you would ask me who's most valuable, and I'm biased, I admit, but I really think everybody in the community. Like I mentioned on the first event, we had everybody from SOC analysts to detection engineers to analysts at a big four firm, all the way to CISOs of a Fortune 50 company. And it was the ability for everybody really to get together. And the thing is, people who are more junior in their career get the chance to network with people they wouldn't ever have a chance to be in the same room with. They also get content that's a little bit on the more strategic side that they might not get. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, the senior people are getting networking among themselves. They're getting the opportunity to experience and hear from other people at other organizations at all levels what's out there. And, frankly, even for them, we have Debbie Moore as a speaker, and Deb was VP at IBM, involved in quantum computing, which is one of the top organizations in the world on quantum computing. We have Omar, Or is his last name.
Okay.
Omar was the head hacker of Israel's IDF. Everybody heard of 8200, and 8200 is a little like NSA's Tau. Most of the
Yeah.
people are actually writing tools and doing research. He actually led the team of hackers, and he
Oh,
knows all the APTs, not from a theoretical perspective, but he was hands on leading the charge against the other APTs. And so hearing his session is something you will not get anywhere else. I spoke to him, and even his
of course.
former
Yeah.
coworkers were a little bit like, what are you going to be speaking about? And so anyway, this is the type of content that, the top CISOs would rarely have a chance to get a handle on. And at the same time, anybody in the profession would rarely have a chance to get a handle on.
No, this is fantastic. Of course, yeah. The agenda is all out there, so I'm super excited about the roster
Yeah.
so far. I'm sure you're still building it, and looking forward to cruising with you, Ira. This is an amazing concept. Thank you for making it
Well,
available.
oh no, it's my pleasure. And let's not forget, anybody who watches, we worked out with you. If somebody has, I think it's SV Pro 10, they get a 10% discount and stuff. So, feel free to take advantage of the discount. I don't know what else to say because,
Yeah, I'll make sure. I'll bring some of my friends for sure. This is, yeah. It's very very much a ideal networking environment. The right size. I even during the RSA, I like all these side events that you mentioned, right? Where you
Mhm.
actually have a meaningful conversation and not just
Yeah,
dealing with thousands of people. So
yeah. No, I appreciate that.
thank you. Yeah.
Uh,
Anything else you wanted
Okay.
to cover?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, I really just want people to show this is obviously, I have to run it like a business, but it's more of a passion. I really want to bring security events back to where they were and get the connections that I was able to get throughout my career for everyone else. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Oh,
Thanks.
no, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're passionate about something, you better run it as a business, right? That's the only way to keep it going. So I'm glad you found something that there was a market need that didn't exist. So I'm looking forward to your future cruises as well, and any kind of like evolutions that you're thinking about from a format standpoint, it seems like it's ripe for like more creativity. So